Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thanks for tuning in to another guitar lesson. So today we're going to be learning about transposition. So transposition is when we change one musical idea into another key. Okay, so in order to understand this, we have to understand what a key is. A key is basically a major scale. When we say what key are we in, we're talking about what major scale are we based off of. Now we can kind of stretch that. It's not always a strict sense major scale, but really that's basically what we're talking about. If we say we're in the key of C, I'm using my notes from the key of C. That has some other implications as well because I have certain chords that can be derived from the key of C, okay, by harmonizing the notes in the scale. So that's a topic for another conversation, harmonizing the scale. Today we're learning about transposition and what makes a key. So we can take that pattern that we learned, if you go back to our major scale formula lesson, we learned that really it's a pattern that creates the major scale, right? We can start on any note we want and get that same sound. Okay, so really that's what transposition is. It's taking the musical idea, in this case the major scale, and moving it somewhere else using different notes to represent it. And we have to keep the relationships the same. That's where we came up with the pattern whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? That's the formula for the major scale. So we can start that anywhere and get different scales, okay, depending on what note we start on. So to understand this, we rely on a concept known as scale degrees, where we give a number to each one. So I find this really helpful for transposition because if I'm playing this in the key of C, I'm going to do it on one string. We learned our C major on one string, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So that sounds exactly the same as relationships, that is, sound exactly the same as G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. But now I had to say different things. I had an F sharp in there. I didn't have an F sharp in C, so that the notes have changed. But the relationships have stayed the same. So here's a good way to do it. We can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. C is 1 again because we already had it here, the octave. Okay, I can do that with G as well. Now I start on G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, the relationships are always the same. The relationship between the root to the fifth. Okay, so by putting them in scale degrees, I can understand what they are and how to move them around. Okay, so scale degrees are really important. The older way of referring to scale degrees is something called solfege, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Those are great too. I prefer to sing in solfege if I'm going to be singing about these scale degrees, since the vowels that they use are meant for singing, are better for singing, whereas the numbers 7 has 2 syllables already. That's hard to sing one note on, so it has its drawbacks. But in terms of conceptualizing it, I love the concept of scale degrees and thinking about everything as being a scale degree, not necessarily what note specifically it is. Okay, so if I were to say, the melody starts on scale degree number 3. It does, right? Mary had a little lamb. It starts on the note E, which is the 3rd note in the key of C. Okay, so sometimes when we see these scale degrees, they have this little symbol over them, little triangular thing that looks kind of like a party hat over the letter or something like that. I've only seen this a few times in like music theory textbooks, so it's not a super common symbol. But I just wanted to make you aware of it in case you encounter that is what it means. It's telling you that it's a scale degree, and it's not a number that represents one of the many other concepts that we use numbers to represent in music, right? Because we could also have Roman numerals that would usually tell you what chord you're playing, or the Nashville number would be just a regular Arabic numeral with no party hat over it. That's probably telling you that it's the chord named 1. The 1 chord, not scale degree 1. So sort of related, but we can build whole chords off of each one of these scale degrees as well. So yeah, scale degrees is a very important thing to understand. So today we're going to learn about C major, and we're going to translate its scale degrees into the key of G major. We can use our major scale formula, and also we can use this concept of scale degrees to help with this. So first, let's do our single string C major. Okay, so we had C was here on the 1st fret, D on the 3rd fret, because we needed a whole step, right? Next we needed another whole step, that brought us to E. Now we need a half step, that brought us to F. Now we need a whole step, brings us to G. Then we need another whole step, brings us to A, and we need another whole step, brings us to B, and we need a half step at the end of the scale to finish it, back to C. Okay, so we can translate that to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1. Okay, so now let's do the same thing, but G is going to equal 1. So we can do that on our open G string. 1. Okay, so now we need a whole step. 2 happens to be the note A. A whole step away from G is A. Because we had a G sharp here on the 1st fret. A is here on the 2nd fret. So it's a whole step away. Now we need another whole step. B. Okay, now we need a half step. Brings us just right here to C. Okay, that worked out. Okay, now we need another whole step. C, 2 frets up. This is D. Okay, now we need another whole step. 2 frets from D, E. Okay, now we need yet another whole step. What is this one called? Well, this was E. E doesn't have a sharp, so the very next one was F. So we passed F. We went a whole step above E. So this one's called F sharp. And then we need a half step, so we go up 1 more fret, and we're at the 12th fret. The double dot, that's how we know we did it right. From the open string and the double dots is always an octave. That's where the guitar repeats itself. Okay? So we get all the way up here. Now, we had an F sharp in this key. So this is the first time we've seen a sharp in a major key. So in the key of C, we just don't get any sharps in flat. So the key of C is meant for music theory. It was developed to kind of accommodate this in a simple way where we just don't get any of those. Every other key we need, we're going to have either sharps or flats, okay, other than C major. So this one has an F sharp in it. Okay, so we can still represent that as 7 though. Root 7. Root 7 up to the root again. See how they maintain the same kind of relationship? So it's kind of interesting how the notes themselves don't carry nearly as much importance as the relationships. At least to most people. There are some people with perfect pitch that can really identify all the different notes and know exactly what note they're hearing. Most people who are musicians who develop a skill like that develop something called relative pitch, where we learn the pitches in relation to each other. So that's much more easy to learn and teach. They say perfect pitch needs to be developed when you're a child, and you have to have a lot of help when you're a kid to get there. So that's a whole another topic. But anyhow, when we're working on our ear and getting better at that, we're talking about relative pitch. So understanding scale degrees is really essential for understanding the relationships between stuff, because I could say 1/7, and that's true in any key. If I said C to B, that's always a major 7th, I guess. But it's just a little less clear that that's the same thing as G and F sharp. Those are two totally different things, but really they're the same thing, because they're both what we call the interval of a major 7th, because in the major scale, it's the 7th one. So this will help us understand intervals as well. Where we label our intervals come directly from this scale degree thing that I'm talking about here. So we'll talk about intervals and how to unpack all those and give the proper labels to all the different ones at another time. Alright, thank you so much for joining me for that lesson about transposition. We will kind of use all these skills again and talk about these more specific. This is just a lesson that's kind of a basic overview to how we're going to give each one of these things a number so we can remember which place it is in the major scale, and then we can play it starting on other notes but keep the scale the same. And this is really essential to figuring out what chords are in certain keys, understanding what a key is, things like that. So I want you to practice the C single string scale. So review that lesson if you haven't seen that one. There's a lesson where I show you exactly what frets they are. And then you're going to do the same process on the key, in the key of G. So you can start on your open G string. Okay, now I'm not going to show you how to do this one in this lesson, but you can also do this in D. You can really do this on any of our open strings, and the pattern is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so I'm going to kind of give it away if I explain that. Okay, so in this lesson I showed you how to find them all in G and where all the frets were. It's going to be the same frets on any other open string. You'll just be in that key. Okay, so your assignment for a little homework practice here is to do this in the key of G and also D. You're going to start on your open D string and you're going to follow that pattern and you're going to play a D major scale on one string. Okay? You can also write out the notes in D, just like how we compared the notes in C and G, starting on D and following our major scale formula. Not only will you have to know which frets to do, which will be easy because it'll be the same frets as G, remember, but you'll also have to tell me what notes those are. Okay? And you can write that down. They'll be pretty similar to the key of G, okay? But they won't be exactly the same. You'll have a new sharp in the key of D. If you've done this right, you should end up with 2 notes that have sharp names in there, okay? So I hope you enjoy that assignment and have fun kind of searching for all that stuff. And also, as you're doing that, say the numbers as well. Once you find the note names, practice up and down the string saying the note names, but also say the scale degree numbers to really burn that concept into your brain as well. All right, well, thanks again for joining me for this lesson. Keep practicing, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take care.